Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Safe Defend Live. I know it's been a long time and we've missed Doc, but Doc has been busy. He's got lots of important stuff to do. So we've got him back today to talk about categories of attack. I think that's important because we always talk about active shooter, right? And Doc likes to correct us all the time that it's not active shooter, it's active killer, and there's many categories for attack. So we're going to talk about that today because I think we need to understand and prepare ourselves for the other threats that we don't normally talk about.
Yeah, it's good points. That's one of the things, that kind of bother me about how people view some of these attackers. It's about definitions, right? If you don't have the right definition, then you're not going to be able to come up with the best, solution to that, right? The old, like for example, active killer versus active shooter. Well, if you're focused on active shooters, then you'll prepare for a gun, right? But you may not prepare for that knife, right? Or some other lethal method, because it's really, as we've talked about a million times, it's not about the weapon or how it's done. It's about how that person feels, right? And so these type of predators are very different from other types of predators, like a bank robber. But I wanted to touch a little bit more, even more than that, because there's other terms that we talk about. We talk about active shooter, we talk about active killer, but there's also active assailant, right? We heard that term, right? And we also heard active threat, right? Well, the only thing that's in common with those four things is that they're actively going on at the time, right? It's not something that's happened. So if you're thinking of like mass murder, spree murder, serial murder, it's after the fact, right? And so that's your first distinction. Is it happening now? What do we do for stuff that's happening now? And then what do we do for stuff that has happened since, right? It's like now and then what's happened in the past. And both understanding both of those areas gives us an idea how better to mitigate it, right? If it was trying to stop a mass shooting or something, a mass murder or whatever, knowing that it happened, right, then we can back up and do things to try to make it less of a problem or less likely, right? So first thing is, is it happening now or did it already happen? So that's active shooter versus mass murder, okay? Now we're looking at the active pieces, right? Like active shooter, active assailant, active killer, active threat. So active killer and active shooter, very, very clear. This is a very narrowly focused attacker, okay, who is focused essentially on carrying out some sort of lethal attack. Their intent is to kill or destroy maybe an individual, maybe a group of people, or even the organization itself, as we see in like church shootings and things like that, And so we all can kind of understand that. But when you talk about active assailant, that's actually different. Active assailant might be an active shooter. An active assailant might be an active killer. An active assailant might be a guy who robbed the bank that's crossing the front parking lot of a school. Okay. The other thing that really broadens it even more, that makes it very different from an active killer, is the active assailant. It may or may not be lethal. An assailant doesn't have to be lethal. It doesn't have to be someone focused on targeting a specific location or individual. It just could be that he is an active assailant that has some intent to do harm. The other thing is active threat, and we hear that a lot. We deal with active threats. Well, active threats is the broadest. Active threat could be an active killer. It could be an active assailant, but it may not even be a person at all. It might be a tornado. It might be a hurricane. It might be a fire that is threatening a neighborhood, like in California, what's happening right now. That's an active threat. And so when you use active threat, when you mean active shooter, it kind of it changes how you should do things, and it also makes it so that you don't really pick the best option or the best solution, because you don't really understand the threat itself. What does it really mean? And the last thing I'll say, because people always talk about serial killers and they talk about these other things. When you talk about mass killers, spree killers, and serial killers, first and foremost, it's already happened. Okay. when you're talking about that, as far as how we define it and how we think about it. But the difference is that a mass murder is a large number of people that are killed, usually at one time. Okay. And the definition, well, there's different definitions. It might be 3 people killed, 4 people or more killed. It really depends on, the situation. In the active, shooter, active killer arena, a mass murder or mass shooting, okay, happens when there's 3 or more people typically. And that's usually, I think, the FBI definition. But some definitions say it's 4 or more. Doesn't really matter. The bottom line is a mass murder or mass shooting has already happened, and it's a lot of people, and it's happened in one location, and that's it. You talk about a spree murder, okay? That is multiple people being killed, but at different locations, usually in a short period of time. Usually those things are run or are motivated by people who are emotional. A guy that kills his family and then runs over and kills the grandpa and then runs over and kills his uncle, right? 1, 2, 3. Very lethal, but still very different than a mass murder. And of course, a serial murder that everybody loves to talk about, right, is just simply someone who targets one person for murder, and they do it over typically a long period of time with a cooling off period. And their motivation is a lot of times just a gratification and control that they enjoy when they kill people. And so this is just some ideas, right? When we're talking about, and this guy that goes out to the superintendents, this goes out to the security people, the presidents of corporations, the owners, and things like this. Understand what you are preparing for. And also, when you're preparing, understand what is most likely going to happen, and don't limit yourself by thinking of it in a different definition than really what you're truly preparing for. Because there's only so much budget to go around. You've only got so much money, and there's a lot of different decisions you got to make with security. And so part of that is really just understanding the types of killers.
Facts, Doc. This is an interesting discussion because the news media has their spin on things, and they're kind of what everybody listens to. They're not experts. I'm sure they're very nice people, but they're not experts. And I think it's important as we try to mitigate threats to understand which threat we're mitigating and how we're training to prepare for those different threats. And the training is different across the board. So I think it's important that we understand that we build a series of plans for the different scenarios so our team is prepared. It's funny. I feel like we prepared more when I was 7 and 8 years old for active threats than we do today. Whether it be,
we don't worry about the nuclear holocaust. When you get under your table.
That desk was a superpower that you got under, right?
Get under the desk, right? Do this.
We had the fire drills, we had the nuclear drills, we had the tornado drills. We had the evacuation drills out of the school. And today we just lost sight of simple stuff because for whatever reason, I don't want to call anybody out here. I have my own opinion. I'll keep to myself. But I think it's important to prepare our kids to be prepared and understand without scaring them how to mitigate challenges because they are out there and we owe it to everyone to do the right thing. So just my thoughts, Doc.
No, I totally agree, as usual.
So with that, Doc and Dave, we are out of here.
Have a great week.